Act of 1965, which is being, a charge that has been made by some of the swing states, some of the cities in the swing states, the largely African-American neighborhood or cities that Trump has tried to have their votes thrown out. But it's also a violation of a law that was passed in 1871. Now, keep in mind, 1871 was before 1876, which was when African-Americans, newly freed, formerly enslaved people, were essentially stabbed in the back by the federal government with the Tilden Hayes election and the so-called compromise that they worked out, which was they would end Reconstruction in exchange for putting a Republican in the White House, even though the Democrat got more votes. So this was 5 years before that, or 6 years, arguably, before the end of Reconstruction. And in 1871, the Klan was threatening black people who were voting in the South. And so the federal government passed a law. It's called the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871. It was during that little window after the Civil War and after Andrew Johnson left office, and the betrayal of 1876. So this was basically 1868 to 1876 was the Reconstruction era, and there was a genuine attempt to stop the Klan and to create a pluralistic society in the United States. And the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871 makes it a crime to try to shut down. Well, this is what the lawsuit says. Okay, this is a quote from the lawsuit. This is the NAACP and 3 black voters from Detroit who are suing the Trump campaign for this. Quote, under the specter of preventing fraud, defendants, that would be Trump and his campaign, engaged in a conspiracy executed through a coordinated effort to disenfranchise voters by disrupting vote counting efforts, by lodging groundless challenges during recounts, and by attempting to block certification of election results through intimidation and coercion of election officials and volunteers. And I think if you just think of the news reports from the last few weeks, the last few months, the last month or so now, going back to the election in November, and you look at what Republicans have been doing around the country, and particularly the maggots, the Trump proteges, the Trump followers, what they have been doing, it certainly falls into these categories of disrupting voting count efforts, trying to break into buildings, it's the groundless challenges, and this is the stuff in a slightly more sophisticated fashion. I mean, they're not showing up wearing hoods and carrying burning crosses or lighting crosses on the front lawns of the State House. Well, in Michigan, actually, they showed up with a noose around the neck of a doll that they said was Gretchen Whitmer. I mean, that's Klan stuff, right? They just don't call themselves the Klan anymore. The Klan, that's so, 1920s. Now it's, the 3%ers or whatever. I mean, they've got new names. They've reinvented themselves. But it's the same old shtick, and it's the same people. Basically saying, we don't want black people voting is their shtick. I mean, that's what they have to say. And finally, Mitch McConnell, I'll just give you a short one here. 2020 is now the deadliest year in the history of the United States in terms of actual numbers or percentages. In terms of percentages, it is actually the second deadliest year in the history of the United States, maybe the third. We don't know about the Civil War, but since the flu pandemic of 1918. But in absolute numbers, this is it.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And it's all because Donald Trump and his merry band decided to try to get as many Americans infected as possible so he wouldn't have to deal with COVID. And welcome back. Tim in Aloha, Oregon. Hey, Tim, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, I was watching your interview with Ralph Nader, and, the guy's admirable things he's done for the last 50 or 60 years, but there's one question that I would love to have asked him. whether he think the world would be a better place today if Gore would have been elected instead of Bush in 2000. What do you think he'd say to that?
I think he would say that if George Bush's brother Jeb hadn't knocked 90,000 African Americans off the voting rolls in Florida, Al Gore would have been elected.
Yeah, but there was always that controversy on whether he really gave a rap.
I know. I think it's a phony controversy.
Yeah,
and I'm not going to hold that against Ralph. I've moved on. Rudy in Atlanta. Hey, Rudy, what's on your mind today?
Tom, I wanted to disagree with Dave when he said that, to a degree anyway, when he said the toad in the road. The toad in the road is anyone that follows Trump. And I'm going to say this. At this particular point in 2020, in my mind, Tom, capitalism and evolution are synonymous. I don't think that capitalism can even deal with people that think like Trump. So, even a snake has to shed its skin, Tom. At some point, you just can't go.
So are you seeing Trump more as an IED in the road than the toad in the road? Is that your point, Rudy?
Yes, all that.
To use the military metaphor, yeah. I think so.
Whoever follows Trump will get ran over by evolution and capitalism. That's what I mean.
There you go. Well said, Rudy. Thank you very much. Marilyn in Sun City, West Arizona. Hey, Marilyn, what's up?
Hey, Tom, I have a thought about the Electoral College, and I want your thought on it. The will of the people hasn't mattered in years. In 2000 and 2016, didn't matter who won the popular vote. It's all down to the Electoral College. So in this instance, because even if they were to find 1 million fraudulent votes, does it really matter? Because once the Electoral College speaks, they have spoken. Even if there were 5 million fraudulent votes, it's the Electoral College that will decide. Am I not right?
Yes, and in a super technical way, you're very right. Because the Constitution basically says that each state can decide how their electors will vote. And the corollary to that is they can decide who their electors will vote for if they choose to, which Florida almost did in the 2000 election. But when the recount looked like it was going to go for Al Gore, and it turned out that the recount would have put Al Gore in the White House, but got stopped by the Supreme Court.
So we don't really have to be that concerned because the Electoral College, especially after
we should
January
always be concerned
6th,
about the integrity of our vote.
Correct, but once the Electoral College speaks on January the 6th, if a week later they come up with 1 million fraudulent votes, does it matter?
Well, it could cause states to reconsider. I mean, but they're not going to find those fraudulent votes. I mean, I don't want to be in the business of saying voter fraud or election fraud doesn't matter. Voter fraud is pretty much non-existent. One guy in Pennsylvania voting his dead mother. I mean, that's how rare it is. Election fraud, on the other hand, what Trump is trying to do is widespread. Marilyn, thank you. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. We're available on SiriusXM, Free Speech TV, Pacifica, commercial stations nationwide, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, on the Thom Hartmann app, and you can even tell your smart speaker to listen to the Thom Hartmann Program. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Joan McCarter has a great post over on Daily Kos. Just a couple of quick stories here to share with you, and then I'll pick up your phone calls here in this third hour. The headline on this one is McConnell lost on corporate COVID-19 liability, so he found another way to punish workers. And sure enough, he did. The CARES Act back in March that was passed by the House and the Senate went along with it, required employers to provide 2 weeks of paid sick leave if you got COVID. It also allowed for up to 10 weeks of paid leave if your children's school was closed and you had to be home with your children because of COVID, up to 10 weeks. That could have been easily extended up until March of next year with this new piece of legislation. But McConnell killed it. No more paid sick leave, no more paid time off, nothing. Companies can get reimbursed if they, out of the goodness of their hearts, extend these benefits to their employees, which they may selectively to, say, their senior executives. But, as Joan McCarter said, there was absolutely no reason for McConnell to do this other than sheer cruelty to working people. And then finally, this is from the National Association of Realtors, which is interesting. But it was quoted in one of the newsletters that I get in the mail this morning. I think it was Axios. It might have been the New York Times. Pretty sure it was Axios. But in any case, I tracked down the original source, and this is the median age of home buyers, starting with the beginning of the Reagan Revolution, 1981. Now, the first house that Louise and I bought, I was in my late 20s. I think I was 27 or 28 when we bought our first house. We had 3 kids. We had been in the business world for years. And it turns out that the median age for new homeowners in 1981, in the year that Reagan became president, was 29 years old. And the median age for repeat homeowners was 36 years old. In other words, people who were now buying their second home and eventually would go on to maybe buy a third or fourth. And as I've pointed out before, home ownership is the principal way that middle-class folks build wealth. And I just my own life, I know that more than half of everything that Louise and I own is of our assets are in our home, and have been acquired over time by buying a house, and after when we move, the value of the house has gone up, and we buy a new house, and we've been doing this for 50 years or 40 years, I guess. So anyhow, the median age for home buyers when at the beginning of the Reagan Revolution and repeat home buyers was 29. The median age right now for repeat home buyers is 55, people buying their second home. For first-time buyers, it's 47. And you say, well, why is that? Why is it that people in their 20s are no longer first-time home buyers? Now it's people in their 30s and 40s. I think the answer is fairly clear. We have probably the largest 2 pieces of the Reagan Revolution were destroying free college. Reagan first did that in California. The University of California system was absolutely free, or cheap enough that it was functionally free. I spent the summer of 1968 in San Francisco, and I was not alone there. There were at least a half a dozen of my friends that I knew from East Lansing back in the day had moved out to California. They created a little enclave in Mendocino, actually, of kind of refugees from MSU who had gone out to California to get free college educations. Well, Reagan put an end to that in California when he was the governor, and then when he became president, him and Bill Bennett and Congress and the Republicans, they put an end to basically free college for anybody in this country. So now people, over the last 20 years, people get out of college, they've got $100,000, $200,000 debt, or even a $30,000 or $40,000 or $50,000 debt, and it means that you can't buy a house. So that's one. And then the second one was that wages have been stagnant since 1981. They have not gone up significantly at all. But the cost of living certainly has, so people just can't afford it. I think this is a sign. This is one of these signs of the cracks in our system that lead to social and political instability. When people feel like they have not gotten a fair shot, and the easiest way they know that they can tell that, is simply by looking at their parents. My parents could go to college for free. Why can't I? My parents could afford good health insurance and never got hit with surprise billings. Why do I get screwed? My parents could buy a house in their 20s. Why can't I? And at a certain point, some people, get those messages, basically. And out of those messages, they become political radicals. They start subscribing to weird conspiracy theories and going down strange rabbit holes on Facebook, and it's just like this. It's a prescription. Reaganomics, neoliberal economics, embraced fully by the entire Republican Party to a person since 1981, and embraced by maybe solidly a third of the Democratic Party to this day. Reaganomics and neoliberal economics are a prescription for social upheaval in a negative way, for the disintegration of society, and for political upheaval in a way that leads toward authoritarianism and dysfunction in government. And it's why we need to repudiate Reaganism and the whole neoliberal agenda as soon as possible. Okay, I'm done with my rants here for the day. I'll pick up your phone calls right after this break. It's coming up on 28 minutes past the hour. It's 27 minutes and 20 seconds past the hour.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Back with your calls in just a moment. The Thom Hartmann Program, fair and only slightly unbalanced. And welcome to the Thom Hartmann Book Club, Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading. For the Thom Hartmann Book Club today, it's Waking the Witch, Reflections on Women, Magic, and Power by Pam Grossman. This is from the introduction. Witches have always walked among us, populating societies and storyscapes across the globe for thousands of years. From Circe to Hermione, from Morgan Le Fay to Marie Laveau, the witch has long existed in the tales we tell about ladies with strange powers who can harm or heal. And although people of all genders have been considered witches, it's a word that is now usually associated with women. Throughout most of history, she has someone to fear, an uncanny other who threatens our safety or manipulates reality for her own mercurial purposes. She's a pariah, a persona non grata, a boogie woman to defeat and discard. Although she's often been deemed a destructive entity, in actuality, a witchy woman has historically been far more susceptible to attack than an inflictor of violence herself. As with other terrifying outsiders, she occupies a paradoxical role in cultural consciousness as both vicious aggressor and vulnerable prey. Over the past 150 years or so, however, the witch has done another magic trick by turning from a fright into a figure of inspiration. She is now as likely to be the heroine of your favorite TV show as she is its villain. She might show up in the form of your Wiccan co-worker or the beloved musician who gives off a sorceress vibe in videos or on stage. There's also a chance that she is you, and that witch is an identity you've taken upon yourself for any number of reasons, heartfelt or flippant, public or private. Today, more women than ever are choosing the way of the witch, whether literally or symbolically. They're floating down catwalks and sidewalks in gauzy black clothing and adorning themselves with Pinterest-worthy pentagrams and crystals. They're filling up movie theaters to watch witchy films and gathering in back rooms and backyards to do rituals, consult tarot cards, and set life-altering intentions. They're marching in the streets with Hex the Patriarchy placards and casting spells each month to try to constrain the commander-in-chief. Year after year, articles keep proclaiming it's the season of the witch, as journalists try to wrap their heads around the mushrooming witch trend. And all of this begs the question, why? Why do witches matter? Why are they seemingly everywhere right now? What exactly are they? And why the hell won't they go away? I get asked such things over and over, and you would think that after a lifetime of studying and writing about witches, as well as hosting a witch-themed podcast and being a practitioner of witchcraft myself, my answers would be succinct. In fact, I find that the more I work with the witch, the more complex she becomes. Hers is a slippery spirit. Try to pin her down and she'll only recede further into the dark, deep wood. I do know this for sure, though. Show me your witches, and I'll show you your feelings about women. The fact that the resurgence of feminism and the popularity of the witch are ascending at the same time is no coincidence. The two are reflections of each other. That said, this current witch wave is nothing new. I was a teen in the 1990s, the decade that brought us such pop culture as Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Charmed, and The Craft. Not to mention riot girls and third-wave feminists who taught me that female power could come in a variety of colors and sexualities. I learned that women could lead a revolution while wearing lipstick and combat boots, and sometimes even a cloak. But my own witchly awakening came at an even earlier age. Morganville, New Jersey, where I was raised, was a solidly suburban town, but it retained enough natural land features back then to still feel a little bit scruffy in spots. We had a small patch of woods in our backyard that abutted a horse farm, and the two were separated by a wisp of running water that we could cross via a plank of wood. When we were little, my older sister Emily and I would sometimes venture to the other side where we could feed the horses, an act that still scares me to this day, and pick fistfuls of clover. But the majority of our time was spent on our side of the stream, threading ourselves through the thicket of trees that served as our personal forest. In one corner of the yard, a giant puddle would form whenever it rained, surrounded by a border of ferns. We called this spot our magical place. That it would vanish and then reappear only added to its mystery. It was a portal to the unknown. These woods are where I first remember doing magic, entering that state of deep play where imaginative action becomes reality. I would spend hours out there creating rituals with rocks and sticks, drawing secret symbols in the dirt, losing all track of time. It was a space that felt holy and wild, yet still strangely safe. As we age, we're supposed to stop filling our heads with such nonsense. Unicorns are to be traded in for Barbie dolls, though both are mythical creatures to be sure. We lose our tooth fairies, walk away from our wizards. Dragons get slain on the altar of our youth. Most kids grow out of their magic phase. I grew further into mine. My grandma Trudy was a librarian at the West Long Branch Library, which meant I got to spend many a long afternoon lurking between the 001.9 and 135 Dewey Decimal sections, reading about Bigfoot and dream interpretation and Nostradamus. Waking the Witch by Pam Grossman. On the Science Revolution this week is Melissa Troutman and Joshua Boaz Probanek on their new documentary with Mark Ruffalo, Invisible Hand. The Rights of Nature movement captured in Invisible Hand changes nature's status from property to a living entity, which fixes a fundamental flaw within societies worldwide that contributes to everything from genocide to ecocide. Across the globe, communities are creating new legal systems that grant legal, enforceable rights to nature, thereby honoring the rights of all people, too. This documentary shows when we enact and enforce the rights of nature, we restore the sanctity and equanimity of all life, including human beings. Tune into the Science Revolution wherever fine podcasts are found. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. You know, a week or so ago, Mitch McConnell, privately with a group of Republicans, and, you know, this leaked out, and the Washington Post reported on it, and the Republicans are going, yep, that's what he said. Sure enough. Mitch McConnell told the Republicans, we've got to pass some sort of a giveaway to working people, you know, some kind of COVID relief here. We've got to do this, or Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue are not going to get elected down in Georgia. They are taking a beating down there because we're not doing anything. And that, I think probably every Republican understands, is the only reason that Mitch McConnell allowed any sort of relief to pass the Senate. Because up until 2 weeks ago, he was blocking everything and had been since May. In May, the House of Representatives passed the HEROES Act, $3 trillion bill that would have helped keep state and local governments together, that would have helped keep workers together, that would have offered small businesses relief. I mean, just right across the board. It was an extraordinary piece of legislation. And he refused to even hold a hearing on it. Then a month later, they passed a $2 trillion version, and he refused to hold a hearing on that. And he has simply refused to even hold discussions about COVID relief since May until 2 weeks ago. And 2 weeks ago was about the time that Reverend Warnock and John Ossoff both started climbing in the polls above their Republican challengers. And at that point, Mitch McConnell was, hey, we got to help these out. We got to help these Republicans out in Georgia. Let's throw the rabble a bone. But what does McConnell say when he walks out on the floor of the Senate to announce that? He says, a few days ago, with the new president-elect of their own party, everything changed. Democrats suddenly came around to our position that we should find consensus, make law where we agree, and get urgent help out the door. No, Mitch, stop lying to us. This had nothing to do with Joe Biden being elected president. It has everything to do with wanting to keep Mitch McConnell wanting to keep his control of the Senate. It's just that simple. Anyhow, let's pick up some of your phone calls here. Gunnar in Iceland? Hey, Gunnar, what's up?
Yeah, hi, man. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, that's great. I don't know if you remember me, but you interviewed me, I think, in Iceland several years ago when I was a journalist.
You're the reporter?
For the Icelandic Broadcasting. Yeah.
I remember it very well, Gunnar. It's great to hear from you. What's up?
It's just great to check in back with you. I've been watching you all these years since and never had the opportunity or reason really to call you in, but great show you've been doing.
Thank you. So what's on your mind?
What's on my mind right now is the distribution of the COVID vaccine. By the way, you called me a social democrat last time that you introduced me while I was a reporter. But since then, I actually switched parties and went to the Pirate Party and went to Parliament for them for a few years. So,
very cool. So you're a pirate now, too.
But, but I'm back to reporting now, and
so you're reporting about the vaccine in Iceland? There's a problem?
Yeah, there's a huge problem because we had these early agreements with all these companies, Pfizer and all these companies, about delivering vaccines, and our government was really happy to report these signings and even showing them on TV and everything. But it turns out they neglected one small detail in the agreements, which is the delivery date. So we're not actually getting the vaccines as early as any other country, really. We're going to get them pretty late.
Oh, my.
And I think this is actually a problem in several other countries, especially outside the European Union. I know the European Union has a good schedule now, and the UK as well. And I believe America is getting its vaccines. I've seen figures from Canada that they have like 5 times more vaccines than they have population, so they're going to be distributing them around the world. But in Iceland, we just got the numbers up. We have the right numbers of vaccines, but we have no idea when we're going to get them. And I think that's going to be an issue, not just in individual countries in Europe, but in states in America, probably.
Oh, it is already, and particularly rural areas, and this is becoming a problem. There was a really good piece about this in the Financial Times a couple of days ago about how the rich countries, essentially, because the companies that make the vaccines are for-profit corporations, and they're basically saying whoever gives us the best price first, and the most money up front is first in line. And so countries that have smaller budgets or smaller purchases, I believe your population is fewer than 400,000 people in Iceland. Am I remembering that correct?
Yeah, exactly. My father is a professor of political science, and he has been pointing out this for the past few months, that this is going to be a disaster for the third world, especially because they just don't have the clout or the money or the loan ability to gather loans to pay for this in the short term. So they're going to be left far behind, and that means this could actually create a pocket in Africa and in parts of the poorer parts of Asia where COVID is going to be an ongoing problem for years because they cannot inoculate the population. And what are we going to do? Are we going to completely shut off that part of the world from travel?
Well, and then there's the secondary problem, which is, what we're seeing right now in the UK, which is the more widespread a viral infection is, the more rapidly the virus mutates. And, God forbid, there will be a mutation that will be resistant to the vaccine and that may be more lethal. I mean, this is related to SARS and MERS, and SARS had like a 40% fatality rate, and MERS has like a 10 or 15% fatality rate. I mean, this is only a 1 or 2 or 3% fatality rate, but bad things can happen with these coronaviruses.
I lived in China during the SARS outbreak, the first one. It was very educational in terms of what's happened now.
Yeah. That's why they're down at 3 deaths per million people, whereas here in the United States we're over 900 deaths per million people. Gunnar,
exactly.
I need to move along, but other callers. But real quickly, in the Icelandic Parliament, as a member of the Pirate Party, can you give us just a quick thumbnail of what the political landscape in Iceland is now? I know a lot was shifting when you and I met in Iceland. Geez, it seems like a decade ago. After the crash, after the housing crash and everything, and there was some bankers who went to jail and things. How's Iceland doing, and what's the political atmosphere now?
Well, the bankers mostly got out, or were able to serve their sentences mostly out of jail, which resulted in famous scenes like them flying around in helicopters from the jail to their private residences, which was, just egregious to see. And people really never got any closure on that whole thing. But as members of the Pirate Party, we did manage to bring down one government. We brought down a government that was caught pardoning a sex offender, or giving him rather a clean slate after he had served his sentence, so that it would no longer be on his record and he would be able to pursue his career as a lawyer. And this was a pedophile who was a convicted pedophile, and we sort of exposed that, and it brought down the government. But funnily enough, in the next election, the same government was more or less brought back in, and we lost actually we lost 3 members of parliament. So we were punished for exposing a pedophile scandal.
But you still have, forgive my interrupting, I see that I have 30 seconds here. You still have free education and free health care across Iceland for all Icelandic citizens, right?
It's being brought back. The current government on the right wing is trying to reduce the free health care and make it more privatized. So we have a lot of issues going forward.
Yeah. It's happening all over the world.
In future episodes.
Yeah. Okay. Gunnar, it's great to hear from you. Thanks for watching us on Facebook Live over there in Iceland. And thanks for calling in. Great to hear your voice again, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We'll be right back. 45 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Stick around. Taking your calls.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. It's 45 minutes past the hour here in the Thom Hartmann Program, the place where smart people get rich. And welcome back. And Anastasius in Newark, New Jersey. Hey, what's up?
Yes. Hello, Tom. You mentioned today that Donald Trump is a fascist, and I think that's ridiculous. Here's the thing: corporations were not directly owned by the government. There was no sort of de facto state control of corporations during this time. He didn't persecute.
Well, that wouldn't be
minorities.
fascism, Anastasius. That would be communism.
No, fascist countries did that too. Volkswagen was a de facto arm of the government, right? Volkswagen was.
Well,
what else?
It was a private corporation, but it was subsidized by the government. Yes, and in fascist Italy, Mussolini invited corporations to send their representatives to stock parliament. Basically, they replaced all the elected parliamentarians with corporate representatives. But the government didn't own the corporations. The government owning control the means of production is communism, not fascism. Fascism is where it is defined by Merriam-Webster as a merger of state and corporate interests combined with belligerent nationalism.
That is incorrect. That doesn't make any sense, though. Mussolini said that if the government needs to seize the means of production, it can, but it prefers not to directly.
That is the law all over the world.
No, it's a smokescreen.
That's the law here too. That's the Defense Production Act.
And even then,
now there's limits on it here. I mean, when Harry Truman tried to seize the steel industry back, in 1950 during the Korean War, it went to the Supreme Court within a week, and the Supreme Court stopped him. But I mean, we did bail out GM, and the government actually acquired the stock in GM for a short time. They sold it back. There is that means, but that doesn't mean that we're either a fascist or a communist country. But I think fundamentally what we're disagreeing about is a matter of definitions, and so I'll just leave it at that. Ed in Woodstock, New York. Hey, Ed, what's on your mind?
Oh, hi. Yeah, I love your show. I listen on Woodstock 104, 104.1 in Woodstock. It's a cool little station, low-powered, except for when they venture into conspiracy stuff. But anyway, the reason I called is because I think sometimes we neglect the role of militarism and war industries. The U.S. spends as much as the next 10 countries combined, including China and Russia, in that 10, on military ventures, wars for oil, wars for empire. So the other day when you were interviewing a congressman from California, I believe, somebody called in and said, well, what about Lockheed and Raytheon that this congressman may have owned? I was really taken aback that this guy was just cut off, like summarily cut off. So what about the war industry?
I had 20 seconds before the end of that hour, and I stopped him, and Congressman Khanna said, yeah, my wife owns those stocks, and I have nothing to do with that. And by the way, when you buy stock in a company, your money's not going to the company. Your money's going to the last guy who owned the stock in the company. The only time companies make money when stock is sold is during their initial public offering. After that, it's all people moving stock back and forth. But which is not to justify that. I think it looks bad, but yeah, I cut that caller off because I saw that A, they had made their point, and it sounded like there was a speech coming, and B, I had 22 seconds. I remember that very well, and you can go back and listen to that and see it. And no big conspiracy here. There is none. We'll be right back. And in fact, I just named the congressman. On your behalf. You can help America return to democracy by telling friends and family how to listen to this and other great progressive programs. Tag You're It. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Brian in Lake Worth, Florida. Hey, Brian, what's on your mind?
Oh, hi, Tom. Nice to talk to you again. I just wanted to pass something by you, is that as much talk as we do about Trump and what a terrible person he is and how many laws that he's broken, I would like every time or every so often when you say Trump, also say Trump and the Republican Party. Let people know who allows this. Who's condoning it? Who gave Trump the approval to do it? And sometimes who encouraged him to do it? It's the Republican Party. Granted, he's the leader, but he couldn't do it without the backing of the Republican Party. And I think people know it probably in the back of their heads, but it's got to be up front. It's got to be right in the front of their brain.
I'm with you, Brian. And in fact, if you look at my last... if you look at the last 2 weeks of my, Monday through Thursday, I write a Twitter thread, a long thread, and then Mark Harlan republishes that over on buzzflash.com as an article. And I basically use that as my opening rant for the first hour of the program. And if you go back and look at my Twitter threads for the last couple of weeks, you'll see that in every case, I have been making exactly the distinction you're making, which is that this isn't, we don't have a Trump problem. We have a Republican problem. And we have a billionaire problem and a corporate monopoly problem. And a lot of these problems, by the way, were enabled, enhanced, and facilitated by Supreme Court decisions in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. In every case, majority conservative Supreme Court decisions, like the Buckley decision and the Bellotti decision that gave billionaires and corporations the right to own politicians in 76 and 78, which led us right into the Reagan Revolution. Citizens United, which doubled down on Bellotti and Buckley, stuff like that. So, yeah, I'm totally with you, Brian, and thank you for pointing it out. John in St. Louis. Hey, John, what's on your mind?
Tom, I want to talk about the reality of everything. Right now, everyone has watched television, and they see in California, Texas, Florida, all over the country, they see people driving in lines, getting free food into their cars. We're in the middle of an economic depression. The government's giving money to people. We've had businesses closing all over the United States. We are in a depression. And
I agree.
And my question is, because you've wrote several books on this, what are your insights on us getting out of this depression? That's what I really would like to know.
Yeah. There are two pieces to this, John. The first is we were already, at least the bottom half of Americans, for at least the last 15, 20 years, have already been in a depression. I mean, fewer than half of Americans could sustain a $400 expense without, being wiped out or having to go into their credit cards and things like that. So the suppression of wages and the concentration of wealth at the top and the price cuts or the tax cuts rather for billionaires has produced a structural problem that made everything worse. And then on top of that, we got a virus which has shut down large sectors of our economy. It's shut down the entertainment sector, including restaurants. It's shut down the travel sector to a large extent. And it is, it's having other secondary effects in a lot of other sectors of our economy. And that, solving that problem means we have to solve the coronavirus problem. And with the measles vaccine, you have to have 95 to 96% vaccination rates before you achieve herd immunity, because the measles virus is something like 20 times more contagious than the flu virus. It's really contagious. The coronavirus seems to be mutating in that direction, becoming more and more contagious. And so the best estimates are it's going to require between 70 and 80% vaccination to achieve herd immunity for the coronavirus, but it may be even higher than that, particularly with this mutated version. So number one, we've got to get the coronavirus under control. Number two, we've got to repeal neoliberalism, essentially. Lift the crushing burden of student debt and medical debt off American families. We have 500,000 American families who go bankrupt every year just because of medical debt, something that literally does not exist in the rest of the developed world, in the other 33 of the 34 OECD countries. And then you have, as I was saying earlier, the average age of a first-time home buyer has gone from 28 or 29 into the 40s. Because young people have so much student debt that they can't afford to get into housing. And of course, the housing market is one of the things that produces not just economic activity, but what middle-class wealth. And so those are all the things I think that add up to that. John, thank you for the call. Adam in Chester, New Jersey. Hey, Adam, what's up?
Hey, Tom, thanks for taking the call. Quick question. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the fact that for the first time in 40 years, we will have a vice president, recent senator, who will be the president of the Senate and can be the president of the Senate, thereby taking the power away, at least the decision on what gets voted on, away from Moscow Mitch. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. I think she could be
I've talked about this numerous times, Adam. Yes, it's been since the 1920s. We have not had a vice president preside over the Senate as president of the Senate outside of the ceremonial functions like, counting the vote on January, whatever it is, 5th or 6th or something like that. And I mean, John Adams presided over the Senate when George Washington was president. He was vice president. I really think that we need to bring that back. And I think that Kamala Harris needs to walk into the Senate on day one and say, I'm going to run the Senate. This is, I'm vice president. I'm president of the Senate. The Constitution says so. Mitch, the Constitution doesn't say anything about Senate Majority Leader. That's simply a tradition. We used to have a tradition that when the president appointed somebody to the Supreme Court, the Senate would quickly consider that appointment. Mitch, obviously you don't care about tradition, so I'm not going to respect your tradition. I'm going to run the Senate. That's what I want her to do. And I've said it repeatedly here. I'll continue to say it. I don't know if it's going to happen. In fact, I'm skeptical, sadly. But we'll see. We'll see. Anyhow, thanks so much for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. Not sure if Congressman Pocan will be with us or not. We'll find out tomorrow morning. Have a great afternoon. Get out there, get active. Tag You're It. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are CB Distillery, CBD for sleeping. More info at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. The Clean Phone Pro phone sanitizer and charger. More info at thenewdealshop.com. ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at expressvpn.com/Tom. X-Chair, changing the world one seat at a time. More information at xchairtom.com. Bloomsy Box, simply better blooms. More info available at bloomsybox.com, code TOM. And Boll & Branch Sheets, crafted for the common good. More info at bollandbranch.com, code TOM.